Hi, welcome to Healing Journey, www.healingjourneyservices.com. Today we're going to be talking about estrogen dominance and how what you eat and your gut health can actually impact your level of estrogen in your body. So a really interesting topic that I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know a lot about. So definitely stay tuned for that. But before we dive in, I want to talk a little bit about my membership program, Gut Instinct. So this is a program designed specifically for women who have chronic gut issues. So through this program, we provide tons of amazing resources, recipes, how to detox your lifestyle, everything that you would want to know to improve your gut. And the amazing part of this membership is that it has a great community of amazing women, actually from North America and all over the world. And we also offer lab testing so that you can do a deeper dive into what is actually going on with your gut health, as well as what I'm going to talk about today a little bit more, which is your hormone health. Okay, so before we dive in, I'm actually going to share my screen with you because I want you to have a sense of how we look at hormones in the Gut Instinct program. So this is what's called a Dutch test, and I really like the Dutch test because it will tell us what's going on with your hormones differently than your blood does, because it measures the more active form of your hormones and it looks at a specifically your hormones on a certain day of your cycle, right? So between 19 and 21. So we can really get a gauge of whether your hormones are cycling properly or within range or not. And here we can see that this person definitely has estrogen dominance. So this is a sample of a 37-year-old female, and you can see here that her estrogen is at the very top of the gauge and her progesterone is actually really, really low. So this is an extreme case of estrogen dominance being when our estrogens are higher than our progesterone. Okay, and so that creates a whole bunch of symptoms. And so there's lots of different ways to tell that you have estrogen dominance, and obviously the Dutch test is one of them. But symptoms of high overall estrogen include PMS symptoms, heavy or irregular periods, if you have that fluid retention in your breasts. That's another way to tell. Breast tenderness, weight gain, headaches, brain fog, mood swings, depression, if you're weepy and emotional, if you're irritable, if you have low libido, sugar cravings, sleep disturbances, histamine issues, cysts in your breasts, uterine fibroids are big ones, endometriosis is a big one, thyroid problems are a big one, gallbladder problems, and blood sugar issues. So that's a whole host of symptoms that you have with estrogen dominance, right? So let's talk about how our lifestyle factors can contribute to estrogen dominance. So one of the things that contribute to it is the foods that we eat. And so I'm going to go through a couple of different ways that contributes. So one is if you're eating something called phytoestrogenic foods, okay? So these are foods that are basically estrogen mimicking, and they are not stored in fat tissues, but they can result in raising our overall estrogen. And if our estrogens, remember, get higher than our progesterone, then we have a case of estrogen dominance. So these are particularly found in soy-based foods. And soy-based foods, as you probably know, are all the rage right now, especially among vegetarian and vegans. And what happens is that these soy-based foods will actually lead to an increase in estrogen in the body. So interestingly, if you consume, traditional amounts of organic soy fermented foods like tempeh and miso, these don't seem to cause these issues. So if you're going to go with a soy-based food, you need to go with a healthier form of the soy-based food. Another example is if you have a low fiber diet. So why? How does this contribute to estrogen dominance? Because we need enough soluble fiber to bind to our body's bile to then escort those hormones out of the body. So if you have this buildup of estrogen and estrogen can't get out of your body, then guess what? You're going to have estrogen dominance. So you need to make sure that you're eating a diet that's high in soluble fiber. Okay. Poor diet in general can actually contribute to estrogen dominance. And what's interesting is coffee is known to raise estrogen. So people that stop drinking coffee have discovered that they have a reduction in anxiety and mood swings, in painful menstrual cramps, in fibrocystic breasts, in hot flashes, and in insomnia. So this is a very interesting one. And alcohol actually does the same thing. And that's why when people who are postmenopausal, when they're drinking wine, they're actually self-medicating because it's increasing that estrogen. Not that I'm recommending all the postmenopausal people to go out and get hammered, okay? Refined sugar actually depletes the blood of magnesium, and magnesium is really important to address inflammation, to address stress, and it will also upregulate the movement of testosterone into estrogens. So that's why we don't want to have sugars. And then obviously if you're eating unorganically, you're actually consuming some of the hormones that unorganic meat had consumed. And so that actually will cause issues as well. Interestingly, when I went to a naturopath years ago, before I got into this field, I had tender breasts, and she actually linked it to all the chicken that I was consuming that was unorganic, which is pretty disgusting. Let's talk about nutrient deficiencies. So nutrient deficiencies can be a result of our diet. We can also be very healthy, but if our gut isn't able to absorb these nutrients because of bacterial infections, because of mold issues, because of parasites, then we're going to end up being nutrient deficient. So B6 is a big one. So B6 actually helps the body to get rid of estrogen metabolites. So if you're low in B6, again, you cannot get that estrogen out of the body. Vitamin E helps with estrogen detoxification as well. And what's interesting is that iodine is a huge one. And this isn't necessarily based on foods. Iodine, we don't get enough iodine in our food, so it needs to be supplemental, and that's a whole other chat. But if our body is deficient in iodine, it can actually, our estrogen levels can increase. Okay, so you need to address iodine deficiency to address our estrogen levels. So there's lots of interesting connections between foods and what we're eating and how this is impacting our estrogen levels. Gut health is another big one. Okay, so let's talk about gut dysbiosis. So if we have bacterial imbalances in our body, which means that our good bacteria is out of balance with our bad bacteria, then what's going to happen is that this negative bacteria is going to produce something called, it's an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. Okay, so beta-glucuronidase can do something where it actually will break up the hormone from what it's being bound to, which is glucuronic acid. It'll break that hormone bond. And the purpose of glucuronic acid being bound to that hormone is that it escorts it out of the body. So if you have high levels of beta-glucuronidase, that beta-glucuronidase is breaking that connection, and then that hormone continues to recirculate in your body, so you actually can't get the estrogen out of your body. So that is another, huge link. And then when we talk about gut bugs, if you have gut bugs, parasites, mold, all of those things are producing toxins inside of your body. So not only does your liver have to deal with all of our environmental toxins, all of the chemical toxins, but now it has to deal with toxins that are being produced internally. So your liver gets really, really jammed up. And when our liver is jammed, this causes a problem because the liver plays a primary role in breaking down our estrogens into estrogen metabolites. Okay, so it's breaking those down into estrogen metabolites that then can be escorted out of our body. But if our liver is not working properly, then you're going to have an issue. The same thing goes with bile production. If you have gut bugs, it's going to impact your ability to produce healthy bile. And we need that bile to bind, right, to that fiber, to bind to the hormone, to escort the hormone out of the body. So these are some very important connections between what we're eating, right? What's living inside of our gut and how that impacts estrogen. And that's why when people come to me with hormonal issues, I always focus on the gut first, because the gut, sorting out what you're eating, sorting out how you're absorbing, sorting out what's living in there, is indirectly going to be impacting all of your hormone levels, including what we talked about today, which is high levels of estrogen. If you have any questions, please feel free to write to me, or you can message me for more information on how to join my Gut Instinct program and figure out what your hormone levels are, what's living inside of your gut, and get support from an awesome community of women.